Alright lads, today I'm going to be speaking a bit about the state of War Thunder. I'm not a content creator, I have nothing to do with Guardian. All of the premiums that I have, I've purchased myself, with pretty much well over £1,000 invested in this game. So like I say, I am invested in the future of this game. I've recently found myself becoming a lot more frustrated with the game for a lot of reasons, well a variety really. Mostly with my experience of RRB. Now, RRB has a variety of problems at the minute in my opinion, both in part due to balancing as well as pretty much just game mechanics. We'll start with the BR compression. At this point most people will be sick of hearing about these two words, but there are serious problems with compression. A lot of people say this is higher at terrible at higher tiers, which I agree with, but it's still present at the lower tiers as well. The fundamental issue with the BR compression is that there's a plus or minus 1 BR within the matchmaking at the minute. This means that planes that perform well at their own battle rating often club in a full down tier, but also get clubbed in a full up tier. The BR ratings are so compressed that Guardian cannot really increase the battle ratings of overperforming planes, and instead this is why they've resorted to increasing silver line repair costs of the planes. Best example of this, in my opinion, is either TU4 or the TA152 high altitude fighter. TA152, it's 5.7, it outcompetes pretty much every other allied fighter at that tier. There's no way this plane should ever face an opponent that's lower than 5.7, but it routinely does. If the plane was up tier to 6.0, however, it would face early jets if it went up to a 7.0 up tier, and it would make the TA152 pretty much redundant. So Guardian can't really increase it, or else it'd just create the same problem further up the chain. The only way to fix this issue, in my opinion, is to either redo the entire battle rating system, or not do the system but redo the actual values for each plane, starting from low tier and slowly working up, making sure each plane or tank is balanced by the tank around it in the other tech trees. The other solution would be to decrease the battle rate and spread of the matchmaker. Both of these are difficult for Guardian really. I personally would do the first option by redoing the entire battle ratings. It's inevitable that Guardian will have to do this at some point, or the player base is just going to vanish. There's nothing more demoralising than going into a game, say a 4.7, realising you're in a game with 5.7s, realising you're basically combat ineffective. Another example of this BR spread that's close to my heart personally, well, close to my War Thunder heart, is the 8.0 jet matchmaker. Now 8.0 used to consist mainly of 8.0 to 8.3 jets, and it was pretty balanced. It was really good fun. You had the Meteors, which are the good turners. You had the F9S, which are kind of jack of all trades. You had the LA-15 and the LA-200, which were the speedy boys. And then you had the jet bombers like the Tu-14s and Canberras, which did their own thing. Honestly, it was a very well balanced matchmaker in my opinion at 8.0. I had a huge amount of fun flying my Meteors. However, recently, as many of you know, Guardian reduced the battle ratings for the MiG-15 and the Javelin to 8.7. Now about 95% of the games in my 8.0 jets are up tier to 8.7. Now 8.0 jets are the very early second generation jets. Maybe early generation second or very late generation, very late first gen jets. They don't have the high altitude performance or amazing energy retention that the MiG-15 and Javelin do. The MiG-15 especially, with its high thrust at medium altitude and amazing energy retention, means it can effectively choose when to engage opponents. If you're in a Meteor, you can turn against the MiG, but he can just go into the vertical and boom and zoom you until you can't do anything against it. You can't follow him up. You can just choose when to engage, gun back down top of you, destroy you. You just boom and zoom you until you run out of energy and die. In my opinion, the 8.0 jet battle rating is dead. It's just a clubbing. Absolutely not fun at all. You go into a game and just realise there's nothing you can do. especially when the majority of the enemy team is MiG-15s and the majority of your team are Meteors or F9Fs. It's just, I don't understand how anyone could look at that and see it's balanced. Another problem with high tier Jet RB at the minute is mixed battle matchmaking. The reason this was implemented was purely because Gaijin couldn't balance the T2. They tried to make it, well, they did make it a 10.0, but obviously 9.0 is in the game. No way they can face a T2. So basically every game now at 9.0 and above is a mixed battle, meaning if I fly a particular plane, it means that enemies on the opposing team will also be flying that same jet as me. Essentially, my opponent has the same strengths and weaknesses. It means you're in an engagement with someone and someone gets on your 6. There's nothing you can do really to shake them off. I've seen quite a few people claiming that because teams are essentially using the same planes, that it's more down to pilot skill than well, it's more pilot skill related rather than it's more equal, shall we say. But RB isn't a duel. You don't you don't go into an engagement with equal energy to your opponent. It's usually you're doing something and then someone dives on you. Or for example, I really like one-on-one engagements, and if I'm in a one-on-one engagement and another enemy joins in the fight, there's nothing you can do because he's in the same jet as you. He's got all the strengths and weaknesses and he's usually coming in with a lot more energy. He can just destroy you. There's nothing you can do to fight that. No one would have fun in RB if it was, say, K4s versus K4s, because it'd just be the same thing. No, it's just stale. No one enjoys this. No one whatsoever enjoys this top tier jets at the minute. High tier jet RB is essentially just turned into a clusterfuck. Winners of dogfights being the person able to get on the other person's 6 first. Usually side climb, wait till enemies are in a fight and then just dive on them. There's nothing much they can do. Well, like I say, it's just stale. No one's enjoying it. No one at all. Especially not me. Another issue, which affects both air and ground RB at the minute, is the map design. We'll touch on ground RB shortly, but we may as well continue with air RB first. Now, air RB doesn't really have an issue with maps, but more so the game design around the maps. For example, it's no secret that in air RB bombers are pretty useless, mainly because allied bombers don't make it to targets, due to the bomber flight paths being incredibly predictable. I think this could be fixed by bomber pilots being given the ability to choose at several spawn points, similar in ground RB where you can select where you want to spawn. Giving bombers multiple spawn points spread out across the flanks of a map would make it harder for enemy pilots to predict the flight paths. It would also mean that enemies on the Axis team would have to split up in order to cover all the bomber flight paths, which potentially could make it to reduce wolf packs basically. It'd make it easier for bombers to get through. Hardly anyone wins now from bombers. If anything, it's the Axis teams with the JU-288s that are winning on bombs. But another way to support bombers would be to add more static targets like ammo depots, factories, train yards, things that are smaller than bases but give a decent amount of RP. I wouldn't really recommend making them count towards ticket bleed, but I'd make them closer to the middle of the map. So you can make it so like the two opposing ground forces were fighting over them, rather than the enemy bases which are located quite far behind the front line of the battle, if you understand what I mean. Similar to like IR2 Stalingrad, where there's just loads and loads of loads and loads of ground targets to shoot at. Basically, enemy fighters won't know. The more targets there are for an enemy bomber to bomb, it's more unpredictable where that bomber's going to fly to, because he can just fly anywhere and still get points, if you know what I mean. To revitalise the game a little bit, I think another YouTuber, I can't remember if it was Slick or Spit, he's saying about how if one team has 4 bombers, then the other enemy team should have 4 bombers as well, to stop one team being essentially 4 bombers, 4 attackers, and then 4 fighters, versus a team of essentially all fighters. I do think that's a good idea as well. So ground RB, something I'm not as experienced as I am with air RB, but I've been playing it a lot for the Operation Heat. And there are several maps in the game that could be doing redone. Maps like Italy could be elongated and have the spawns at either end. So for example, one team spawns closer to A, the other team's closer to C. It could reduce spawn camping, as enemies would have less room to actually camp. And I think it would promote more close quarters fighting, with the ability to flank if possible. Basically, people would be able to make it into the city or the little town area quicker. They won't be as open to camping fire. Another thing would be to introduce some sort of protection for the spawning enemies. So like putting the spawns for tanks like on a hill, so you can't really shoot at them from below, or like behind a hill, so enemies can't really drive up it and shoot them. You have it on the, I think it's Fulda map, where I think it's the southern spawn. It's like dips below a hill, and you can't really shoot at it unless. It's not a great design map because the enemies can just wait on the hills above and wait for you to drive out, but at least tanks aren't being blown up as they spawn in. Another example is the Poland map, which is a great map in my opinion. It's just a little bit of an issue. So as you well know, I think it's the northern spawn. You get the rock mound, which gives one side a pretty good defensive position, as well as a wide view of the battlefield. This could be a simple fix by extending the hill near the sea cap. This would be able to prevent players from shooting spawning tanks from that little rocky outcrop. But I do think that the Poland map is very good and we need more maps like it in the game. Another issue in the game is it essentially uses the same maps for low to high tier tank battles. No new player who spends 3 hours researching their way up to tier 3 then wants to drive on the surroundings of Volkomansk map, I think it's called. The very snowy map which everyone hates. It's really snowy, so the speed of tanks is really low. There's only a few places people actually go, so it's just wide open area with nothing happening in it. Now I also mentioned high tier vehicles, and people might not know this, but most modern tank designs, they're designed to be effective at range. They're not designed for close quarters fighting. I think this design went all the way back to battleships in World War II, where if an enemy ship was too close, then the guns would just go straight through the side, and if the enemy was too far away, the plunging fire would just go through the actual deck of the ship. So you didn't want to be far away from the ship, you wanted to be quite close so that the guns were the rounds were basically coming in slightly angled, which basically give the ship more protection. I've kind of butchered that. I think I saw it on a Nicholas Moran video. Anyway, there's a bit of a convergence. But all the top tier tanks, they're not designed to be taking shots at point blank range, as is usually the case in War Thunder. This is why all of the top tier tanks can be pretty much penetrated from anywhere, even from the front. None of them were designed to take shots that close. This means tanks, like the majority of the British top tiers, are just known. Well, they're well known in real life for their defence, but in game they're known as a joke, just because you can't use their armour the way it would be used in real life. Now unfortunately this might just be a sad reality of an actual game, but it could be improved by featuring maps like Siegfried Line or Poland, Kursk, which have very long sight lines. And there's no reason top tier tanks should be fighting on Normandy, basically. When you've got guns that can fire at, you can basically point and click at 1 kilometre away, can't you really? And you have like the top tier tanks which have got great mobility. You can get from one end to the battlefield in a few minutes, never mind the 10 minutes that it might take on tier 2. I'm going to talk a bit more about just key game features now. There are several things I feel are pissing myself off and a few other people. Things like crew lock. Why is it in the game? If someone crashes into me, not only do I have to pay for the repair, but now I also have to wait up to 8 minutes to play that same plane or tank again. It's really dumb. Also, if a ground RB is going bad and I rage quit when I only have an SPA left, it locks the entire crew out. I think the actual game is making people stressed, and then they rage quit, and then the game mechanics are making them even angrier. I don't know. I can't. It's just stupid. But speaking of crews, I think the crew point gain is way too slow. If someone starts War Thunder, it could take them weeks or even months to get enough crew points to be able to purchase an expert qualification. Never mind an ace. I think Gaijin needs to make important game mechanics accessible for newer and casual players that can't dedicate loads amount of time. For example, if you're flying turn fighters without at least an expert qualification, you're pretty much wasting your time. You'll over G in a few seconds. Again, top tier jets, you pretty much need that ace qualification for G tolerance and stamina, which you can't do any type of manoeuvring whatsoever. I understand that people that have been playing the game for a while deserve to have rewards for it, but it takes months to get a level 75 crew. I understand it's probably there to make them money, so you just use Golden Eagles, but it's just, I think the main problem with War Thunder is there's just lots and lots of small issues that just annoy everyone. I think if they just change these small things, it'd really give everyone a morale boost. I also believe, I think Slickby has mentioned this in his latest video, I do really agree with it. Like, say the top 3 players on the losing team should be given a higher reward than the rest of the other team. Or the top 3 players on the losing side should be given a higher reward than the rest of that team as well. It doesn't have to be crazy though. I think the winning team get a 120% multiplier for research points, and then a 67% multiplier for Silver Lion. So maybe the top 3 losers get plus 60 RP, plus 30 Silver Lions. You can have killer games with over 3,000 points scored, and then if you lose that game, you only get like 5k research points because of it. I understand that the winners deserve to get a bonus for winning, but I think good performances should be rewarded no matter what team, whether win or lose. I think you're a bit naive, personally, if you think that one player can carry a game. Especially when you have teams of like 10v10. One person can't really affect the outcome anymore. If you do have a poor team, it's pretty much out of your hands, you can't really win. I'm not really one of those people that say, when I lose it's because of my teams. We all have things to improve on, but it's undeniable that I don't know, some people they rush a cap circle and die, spawn into a plane, die straight away, then they're out of the game. There's nothing you can do when it's like 10 versus 8 if 2 people have been knocked out in the first 2 minutes. Something personally that I would like to see, and I don't know whether this is good, it's just an idea from me, but anyone that's watched Orange Doom's streams where he does duels with his viewers, they look good, they look fun. It's not really something that you get to do in War Thunder anymore. Engagements usually are rather biased in terms of you or the enemy. It's never really a fair fight. So I was thinking of, well, for a start, I personally don't have any other friends that play this game, so I can't really set up a duel between friends because no one plays it. So I think implementing some sort of matchmaker, which either had predetermined planes or it matched planes battle ratings and put 2 people against each other. I think that would be refreshing for the community. I think we do all like one-on-one fights. I think it would be good to get people to learn the planes better, to know how to dogfight better. Because RRB usually consists of starting a dogfight and then being killed by someone diving on you. It's hard to have a good, long, drawn-out one-on-one fight now, which is something I really miss. I don't really understand how Gaijin could implement a BR-rated matchmaker, so having like a fixed plane for a day or a week is probably the way to go. Obviously one plane at 5.7 might be really good at high altitude, where the other it's not so good. So you couldn't really put like an LA5 against a BF109 G6, because one's really good at high altitude, one's good at low altitude. But they could easily make it into event, or put it into the events tab. But I don't know if that's me chatting out my arse. I think it might be a good idea, just for test it at least. One last thing I want to talk about is again related to the Orange Doom. Well, it's not really related to Orange Doom, but he's probably the main voice piece of it. It's the CAS vs SPA war that's been raging since 1.69 heroes got nerfed. Or the rockets got nerfed, sorry. I think the simple solution to this issue with the SPAs is to just create a new class. So you'd have light tanks, medium tanks, heavy tanks, tank destroyers, SPA, and then radar SPA. And you give the radar SPA quite a lot higher spawn point cost than regular SPA. Maybe make them the same amount as the heavy tank to prevent people spamming them out, like the ADAX or Tunguska, which are more the ADAX really, which is very potent against other tanks as well. And this is something that, well, I don't know if it's a good idea, but like prevent people spawning into helicopters or planes at spawn. Make it like the planes where you need to earn the points first before you can spawn in. Alternatively, or additionally, you could also prevent any aircraft from being spawned in the first 5 minutes of a game, or longer. That's just an idea from me. This would allow slower tanks to get into the fight without being bombed 2 minutes into the game by someone who wraps a cap circle and J's out. Best example of this would be a mouse, which when I'm flying CAS and I see a mouse, it's the first thing to go for, and they usually haven't even got to the battlefield yet. And I don't think people would get so frustrated at closer support if you had a certain amount of the game where you couldn't be bothered by it. Like if I'm in a tank and I've got like 6 kills and then I get killed by a plane, fair enough. If I get killed by a plane before I've even made it into the fight, it's just annoying because it's pretty much out the game. You can't spawn any other heavy tank in. So that's pretty much everything that's been on my mind. Everything that I can think is wrong with War Thunder. Now, I don't play Naval, so I can't give any insight into that game mode. I think Napalm Rat's probably the best person to ask for that. Once again, these are just my ideas. I could be chatting pure shit, and my thoughts and opinions could be completely different to yours. I love War Thunder, and I do hope we as a community can help improve it in a civilized way. A lot of people have been using the hashtag fix the game in 1.91, which I am a bit. I agree with him. I think we do need to take a bit more of a I don't really know how to word this, a more vigilant approach. I don't think this idea of pleading with Guardian is going to work. I think we need to get, well, there's two opposing camps, isn't there? There's the please consider camp of Mike Goes Boom, and you've got the please fix the game in 1.91, which was started by Orange, Slick, Doom, Spitfire, Slick, Spitfire and Orange Doom. I think we need somewhere in the middle. I don't know how much longer I can play this game if nothing's changed, because top top T is broken, 8.0 is broken. Pretty much every time I fly my 5.0 P51 out, I get up tier to 5.7 and get clubbed. It's the serious problem needing the matchmaker, and I don't see how Guardian's going to make money from it. But like I said, I love this game. I hope we can, as a community, can improve it. That's all I've got to say really. Thanks for watching.